It's really easy to feel like you understand something when the AI is doing the explaining for you, but the real test is whether you can explain it back. In this video, I'll show you practical ways to use AI to check your understanding by making you recall, explain, apply, and respond. Let's set sail. This video is a practical follow-up to my earlier video about using AI as a study partner. In that video, the bigger idea was that AI can support learning without becoming a shortcut. And one of the most useful things it can do is help you check whether understanding actually happened. Because sometimes there's a trap, and reading a good explanation feels like learning. But recognition is not the same thing as recall. And recall is not the same thing as being able to explain something clearly in your own words. And that matters because there's a gap that people run into on a test or in an interview or a class discussion. And if AI always explains first, you can feel like you know the answer without finding out what you actually know. So I want to show you a better method, using AI to ask back. The first method is quiz questions. And this works because it forces you to retrieve the answer instead of just recognizing it when you see it. That sounds simple, but it makes a big difference. Because if I ask AI to explain plate tectonics, I can follow along and think, yeah, I get it. But if I ask it to quiz me, now I have to produce the answer myself. And that's a completely different kind of mental work. So one good prompt might be to ask for 5 short answer quiz questions. And the last part, about not giving the answers until I reply, is important. Because if the answers appear immediately, now it becomes review again instead of recall. For example, if the AI asks, what is the name of the supercontinent that existed before the continents drifted apart, you answer first. Then you compare your answer to what AI gives you afterward. And so now what you're checking is not whether you were vaguely close. Now you're checking to find out if you know the answer clearly, or if you're missing important terms, or if you're hesitating because you don't really understand it yet. And none of that is failure. It's just a signal that you may need to learn a little bit more to gain full understanding. Quiz questions are great when you want a fast, simple way to see whether the idea is actually in your head. This next method is one of my favorites. Instead of asking AI to explain something, you explain it first. For example, you might type, "Here's what I know about plate tectonics," and then write a short paragraph in your own words. It doesn't have to be a polished answer, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just to check your current understanding. And then you ask AI to tell you what's correct, what's missing, and what's unclear, and not to rewrite it for you yet. And again, the last part matters, because if AI instantly rewrites your paragraph in a cleaner version, you may get a better paragraph, but you learn less about the gap in your own thinking. This method is extremely useful because it checks understanding in your own words, and that's where weak understanding shows up very quickly. Maybe you have the general idea, but you left out things about the plates moving on the upper mantle. And all of that is good to find out, because once you see the gap, you can better understand what to work on. The third method is flashcards. Flashcards are not new, and AI didn't invent flashcards, but AI can make them quickly and shape them around the exact topic you're learning. That makes them easier to generate, easier to revise, and easier to customize. So you might ask for 10 flashcards on plate tectonics and get a mix of vocabulary and concept questions. And mixing things up makes a big difference, because if every flashcard is just term definition, that's not a lot of practice about concepts. You can probably see how these kinds of questions push understanding a little bit further, and flashcards will work especially well when you need repetition and structure. And they work best when the cards still make you think, not when every answer is so obvious that you're just nodding along. The fourth method is a fill-in-the-blank review. And this is a nice middle ground between just a passive review and full open-ended recall, because it gives you structure, but you still have to supply the missing idea. For example, you can ask to create a short fill-in-the-blank review on plate tectonics, and the AI might give you something like this. And now you have to produce the missing terms yourself. That's more active than rereading notes, and it's less demanding than building the whole explanation from scratch. And this can be especially helpful when you're in that middle stage where you kind of know the material, but full recall still feels rough. So fill in the blank practice gives you enough support to keep going without turning the whole thing into passive review. And once again, the key is to answer before looking. The next method is to have AI role play as a teacher, tutor, or interviewer. And this is where things can be more interactive. Instead of getting a batch of questions at once, you can create a back and forth. For example, you might ask it to pretend that it's an earth science teacher and to have it ask you questions one at a time about plate tectonics. Getting the questions one at a time keeps the pace manageable, and it makes the exchange feel more natural. And it lets the AI respond to what you actually say, because you're asking it to adjust based on your answers. And this helps because real understanding usually has to survive follow-up questions. It's one thing to answer one prepared question. It's another thing when someone asks, okay, what do you mean by that? Or can you be more specific? And that's where your understanding can become stronger, which makes this very useful. It simulates a situation where you have to stay engaged with the idea, not just repeat a memorized phrase. And this can be especially good for school topics, job interview prep, anything that can involve a real conversation. The next method is oral style questioning. And this is a lot like the teacher roleplay method, but it's slightly different because the focus is not just answering, it's explaining things out loud with more open-ended questions. And when you have to say something out loud, you find out very quickly whether the idea is actually organized in your head. A good prompt for this method would be ask me oral exam style questions on plate tectonics, and keep going deeper if I answer correctly. And you can choose to use voice mode or just answer in a more spoken style while typing. Either way, the value is similar. You're not looking to be perfect. You want to know what parts of the topic you don't understand as well as others. And at times when you pause or get vague about the answer, it might feel awkward and make you feel like you're bad at this. But usually it means this is the edge of what your understanding is. And again, that can help you know what you need to focus on. And the last method is scenario-based practice. This is where you stop asking if you can define it or understand it and start asking if you can use it. And that can make a big difference because a lot of fragile understanding sounds fine in definition form, but falls apart when the concept appears in context. A strong prompt for this method would be to create 3 short scenarios where I need to apply my understanding of plate tectonics, not just define it. This kind of practice is powerful because applying your knowledge is harder to fake, and it shows how strong your understanding is, and if you can explain it when it's not wrapped up in the exact same phrasing that you studied. All 7 of these methods work for the same basic reason. They make you do mental work, not just consume or reorganize or agree with a good explanation. They make you recall, explain, respond, and apply. And that's where you can identify what you truly understand and what is at the boundaries of your understanding on a particular topic. If AI is doing all the explaining, you might only be consuming. But if AI is asking back, there's a much better chance that you're actually learning. You do not need AI to do your learning for you, but it can be very useful for checking whether the learning actually happened. Until our next voyage, I wish you smooth sailing.